My parents cut me off to support my golden child sister while I paid their debts for years, so I left home, and they now beg daily. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and if I had to describe my role in the family, it'd be simple. I'm the one who carries everyone's mess. The fixer. The dependable one. The guy who's supposed to make everything work when no one else can. I didn't ask for that role. It was handed to me before I even turned 16. My parents have always struggled with money. Growing up, I remember the sound of overdue notice envelopes dropping through our front door like it was background noise. My dad worked odd construction jobs when he could, and my mom cleaned houses, but no matter how hard they tried, the math never worked out. So when I turned 16, I stopped dreaming about college and started working part-time at a grocery store. Half my paycheck went straight to bills, the other half to groceries. I told myself it was temporary, just until things got better. Then there's Lily, my little sister, the princess of the family. She never lifted a finger, but somehow, she could do no wrong. When I'd come home exhausted, she'd be sprawled across the couch, shopping online with money she didn't earn. If I said anything, my mom would jump to defend her. She's just young, let her live a little. My father would nod in agreement like it was the law of the house. I used to think she'd grow out of it, that someday, she'd wake up and realize how much everyone was sacrificing for her. But she didn't. In fact, the more I gave, the more entitled she became. When college applications came around, I was told flat out, "We can't afford both of you. Lily deserves a chance." So I let mine go. Back then, I told myself love meant sacrifice. That family always came first, and I didn't realize I was signing up for a lifetime sentence. After giving up on college, I threw myself into work. I picked up a second job at a warehouse to help my parents get back on their feet. The first few months felt noble, like I was doing the right thing. But soon, helping became an expectation, not a gesture. Every payday, my mom would call, her voice soft but rehearsed. "Sweetheart, we're a little short this month. Just until your dad finds steady work again." That "just until" never ended. Lily, meanwhile, was living what looked like a dream. She got into a private university in another city, fully funded by the money I was sending home. I'd see pictures of her on social media, beach trips, brunches, new clothes. I used to stare at those photos from the break room, wiping sweat off my face, telling myself I was proud of her. But pride started to taste bitter. One evening, after transferring another chunk of my paycheck, I finally asked my mom, "Why doesn't Lily get a part-time job? Even something small?" Her tone snapped instantly. "How dare you compare your sister's life to yours? She's studying. You should be supporting her, not criticizing her." My dad chimed in, quieter but firm. "You're the man of the family now. You help because you can." That line stuck with me, because you can. Not because it's fair or because it's right. Just because I was capable. That was enough for them to keep taking. Still, I told myself I was lucky to be useful. That someday, when Lily graduated and got a good job, maybe she'd finally see what I'd done for her. Maybe she'd return the favor. But deep down, I already knew. In this family, the giver was never thanked. He was just expected to give more. When I finally moved out at 25, it wasn't out of rebellion. It was survival. I'd saved just enough for a small one-bedroom apartment on the edge of town. The walls were thin, the kitchen sink leaked, and I slept on a second-hand mattress, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I could breathe without someone asking me for something. Still, every 2 weeks, I sent money home. I told myself it was my responsibility to make sure they were okay. Then came the first crack. Lily dropped out of college. My mom called one night, sobbing. She was so stressed, honey. The pressure got to her. She just needs time to find herself. I froze. Find herself? After all that money? After everything I gave up? I asked what happened to the tuition refunds, but my dad brushed it off. "We used it for bills," he said, like it was nothing. Meanwhile, Lily started posting pictures again. Fancy restaurants, new jewelry, and a car I didn't recognize. I thought maybe she'd gotten a job, until a mutual friend told me she was dating some older guy who liked to spoil her. That night, I called home. My voice shook with anger. Why am I still sending money if she's being taken care of? My father's response was ice cold. "Because you're her brother. It's your duty, not hers. Stop keeping score." That line burned through me. Stop keeping score? I'd been living scoreless for years. No thanks, no appreciation, just endless giving. I hung up that night, staring at my reflection in the dark window, wondering when exactly being a good son started to feel like being a fool. And deep down, I knew something inside me was starting to crack, something that wasn't going to heal easily. A few months later, I got a letter in the mail that didn't make sense. It was from a credit company thanking me for opening a new line of credit. I stared at it, confused. I hadn't applied for anything. When I called to clarify, my stomach dropped. The account was under my name, my address, my information, but I hadn't signed a single form. That night, I called my parents. My mom answered, her voice too casual. "Hey, sweetheart, how's work?" "Don't hey, sweetheart me." I snapped. "Why is there a loan in my name? What the hell did you do?" There was silence. Then her soft crying started. The same guilt-laced sobs I'd heard 100 times. "We had no choice," she said. "Lily had this amazing business idea. She just needed a little push to get started." I could feel my heart pounding. "You used my name? My credit?" My dad cut in sharply. "You're overreacting. We'll pay it back. You have a good job. Stop acting like a victim." I hung up without another word. My hands were shaking as I logged into my credit account. Not only had they opened one loan, but two, totaling nearly $15,000, both already behind on payments. I froze my credit that night and spent hours calling banks, reporting fraud. The next morning, I called Lily. She laughed. Actually laughed. "Relax, you'll make it back." "You always do," she said like it was a joke. That was the first time I realized I wasn't part of a family. I was a resource, the one they drained to fund their dreams, then blamed when reality hit. And as I hung up, my anger shifted into something colder. Not pain, not sadness, but a quiet, controlled fury. The kind that doesn't fade. After that night, I decided I was done. No more money. No more loans. No more playing the dependable fool who cleaned up everyone's mistakes. I transferred the last of my savings into a new account, changed my phone number, and told myself I was finally cutting the cord. It felt terrifying, but freeing too. For once, my paycheck would be mine. A week later, I got a call from my bank. "Mr. Hayes, did you authorize several large withdrawals this morning?" My blood went cold. I hadn't touched my account since the transfer. When I checked online, my balance had dropped to nearly zero. The joint account I'd left open for emergencies had been drained. I drove straight to my parents' house. My mother opened the door with red eyes like she'd been crying, but her tone was sharp. "How dare you storm in like this?" she said. "We needed that money. You're cutting us off when your family's struggling." I was shaking. "You took everything I had left." My father stepped in, his voice hard. "You're acting selfish. Family doesn't abandon each other." I laughed bitterly. "Funny, because that's exactly what you did to me." The next day, at work, my boss pulled me aside. "There were some people here asking for you, your parents." They caused a bit of a scene. I could feel my face burning. The humiliation was suffocating. That night, I got a text from Lily. "Mom and Dad said you're done helping. Guess that means you're done with us too. They're cutting you off. Good luck being alone." That's when I realized the truth. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd erased me from the family the moment I stopped being useful. And as painful as it was, part of me knew this was only the beginning of what they'd do next. I didn't think things could get worse after being cut off, but I was wrong. A few weeks later, I came home to a notice taped to my door, "Final warning, late payment." My rent hadn't gone through because my checking account was still tied to the loans my parents had opened. The money they stole had left me broke, and the unpaid debts they created were wrecking my credit faster than I could react. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed that night, staring at the eviction notice in my hands, feeling this crushing mix of anger and shame. I hadn't done anything wrong, yet somehow, I was the one losing everything. My phone buzzed constantly, unknown numbers, debt collectors, late payment reminders. Each vibration felt like another punch to the chest. One evening, I broke down and called my mom. My voice cracked before I could even get the words out. "Do you understand what you've done to me? You ruined my credit. I can't even pay my rent." Her voice was cold. "Stop being dramatic. You always figure things out. We just needed help." "Help?" I shouted. "You stole from me." And then came the quiet click of the call ending. That's when it hit me. They didn't care. They never did. Days blurred together after that. I stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping. I'd sit in silence after work, surrounded by unopened bills and empty takeout boxes. The walls of my apartment felt smaller every night. When the landlord finally knocked, I was too numb to argue. I packed my things in silence and left, not knowing where I'd go next. For the first time, I had no plan, no money, and no one to call. That night, sleeping in my car under the dull streetlights, I whispered to myself, "This is it. This is rock bottom." I don't know what shifted in me, but the morning after that night in my car, I woke up with one thought pounding in my head: no one's coming to save me. That realization hurt, but it was also freeing. I stopped waiting for apologies, for fairness, for family to feel like family again. I walked into a local diner, asked if they were hiring, and started washing dishes that same day. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough to keep me moving. Each night after work, I parked near the river and slept in my car. The cold air bit through my jacket, but I preferred it to the suffocating warmth of my parents' guilt. I opened a new bank account, started saving a few dollars at a time, and blocked every contact that brought me pain. My parents, Lily, even relatives who just wanted to talk. Therapy came next. My coworker, a kind older woman, noticed my exhaustion and slipped me a number. The therapist's office smelled like lavender and old books, and for the first time in years, someone listened without judgment. "You were never loved conditionally," she said one session. "You were used conditionally." That sentence broke me open. I realized my entire sense of worth had been built on being needed, not being loved. Weeks turned into months. I found a small studio to rent, cheap and barely furnished, but it was my space. I started budgeting, cooking for myself, learning to exist without guilt. I bought a used car with my own name on the registration, no co-signers, no lies, no family strings attached. The first time I turned the key and felt the engine hum, I cried, not because I was sad, but because for the first time, everything in my life belonged to me. Still, deep down, I knew this peace wouldn't last long. People like my parents never stayed quiet for long. It was about 8 months after I cut them off when I got the first call, an unknown number from my hometown. I let it ring out, but curiosity won. The voicemail that followed was from my aunt, her voice trembling. "Your parents are in trouble, sweetheart. The bank's taking the house. They need help." For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at my phone. The same people who drained my accounts, wrecked my credit, and left me homeless were now losing everything. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction, but all I felt was nothing. Just this hollow stillness. A few days later, I got another message, this time from Lily. "We need to talk," it said. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was shaky, almost unfamiliar. "He left me," she said softly. "The guy I was seeing. He took all the money and disappeared. Mom and Dad are panicking. They might get evicted." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "I'm sorry that happened, but I can't fix this anymore, Lily." Her tone snapped instantly. "You're heartless. You'd rather see your own family suffer?" I replied quietly. "I did suffer, for years. You just never noticed." Then I hung up. For days, the guilt tried to creep back in. Late at night, I'd hear my mother's crying echoing in my mind, the sound of her saying, "We're family, we stick together." But therapy had taught me something vital. Compassion doesn't mean access. When I checked social media weeks later, I saw photos of their old house boarded up. The for sale sign stood where I used to mow the lawn as a teenager. That image stayed with me. It wasn't victory I felt, it was closure. The kind that doesn't come from revenge, but from finally walking away while they crumble under the weight of their own choices. I thought that was the end of it, that their downfall would finally silence them. But I should have known better. Narcissists don't vanish quietly. They look for new ways to play the victim. It happened one Saturday morning. I was making coffee in my little apartment when someone started pounding on my door. When I opened it, there they were, my parents, and behind them, Lily. For a moment, I froze. My mother's eyes were red and swollen. My father looked older than I remembered, and Lily, she looked wrecked. Makeup smudged, hair disheveled, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "Can we come in?" my mom asked softly. "No," I said flatly. "Say what you need to say right here." She started crying immediately. "We're losing everything. Please, just help us get through this month. You're doing well now, aren't you?" I clenched my jaw. "After you stole from me, lied to me, left me on the street." My father snapped. "Watch your tone. We're still your parents." That old, familiar anger flared. "No, you're just people who used me because I was too stupid to stop you." Lily stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You ruined this family with your selfishness. You cut us off and let everything fall apart." I laughed bitterly. I ruined this family. You forged my name on loans and called it love. Then I pulled out my phone, pressed play, and let them hear the recording I'd saved. My mother's voice admitting months ago that they opened the loans in my name. The color drained from her face. My father's mouth twitched, but no words came out. I lowered the volume and said quietly, "If you don't leave right now, I'll press charges. You've taken enough from me." For the first time in my life, they didn't argue. They just stood there, speechless, and then walked away. And as the door clicked shut behind them, the silence felt heavier than ever. But this time, it was mine. After that confrontation, something inside me finally settled. I stopped waiting for closure, for guilt to fade, for the urge to fix things to resurface. It was like my entire life had been on fire, and I'd finally walked out of the burning house instead of trying to save everyone else. The following weeks were quiet, eerily quiet, but in that silence, I rebuilt. My lawyer called one morning with news that almost made me cry. "We did it," he said. "All fraudulent accounts have been cleared. Your name is clean." The words barely sank in. Years of damage erased. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding my breath until that moment. At work, I started to thrive again. My manager, who'd watched me crumble months earlier, pulled me aside. "You've changed," she said. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Meanwhile, news of my family's downfall spread quietly through town. The man Lily dated had vanished overseas, leaving her broke and embarrassed. My parents moved into a cramped rental on the edge of the city, surviving on whatever welfare they could get. Friends who once pitied them started realizing the truth, that they'd built their comfort on someone else's suffering. I didn't have to lift a finger. Karma did all the work. Watching it unfold wasn't satisfying in the vengeful way I expected. It was humbling. Justice had a strange, quiet beauty to it. One evening, I drove past my parents' old house, now freshly painted and owned by another family. There were kids playing in the yard, laughing, carefree. I sat there for a moment, smiling faintly. That house was finally filled with love again. And for the first time, I didn't feel anger or loss. I just felt free. Freedom has a strange way of making you visible again, especially to people who only ever saw your worth in what you could give. It started with small things, a missed call here, a voicemail there. Then came the messages, first from Lily, then my mom, and eventually even my dad. The same people who once told me I was dead to them, now suddenly remembered my number. "Hey, honey, we've been thinking about you. Maybe we could talk. Your sister's been having a hard time. Could you lend a little, just to get her back on her feet?" And finally, the one that twisted the knife. "We're sorry for how things went, sweetheart. Family should forgive." At first, I didn't respond. I'd read their messages, feel that familiar sting in my chest, and delete them. But then the texts got longer. Pictures of their tiny rental home, hints about how cold the winters were, how Lily was trying to turn her life around. It was emotional bait, and I almost fell for it. Almost. One night, I sat with my phone in hand, rereading a message from my mom that ended with, "You're our only hope now." I thought about every time I'd been their only hope before, every time it left me broken, and bleeding inside. And that's when it hit me. They weren't sorry for what they'd done. They were sorry they'd lost control of me. So I typed one message back. "I hope you find peace. But I'm not your solution anymore." Then I blocked their numbers. For a while, I felt empty, like I'd cut off a part of myself. But as the days passed, that emptiness began to feel like space. Space to breathe, to grow, to live without guilt. That night, I slept like I hadn't in years, without fear, without anger, and without that invisible leash pulling me back. A year later, I went back to my hometown for the first time in years. I wasn't sure why. Maybe closure, maybe curiosity. The streets felt smaller than I remembered, the buildings older. When I drove past my parents' old house, I barely recognized it. The peeling paint was gone, the yard was filled with laughter, and someone had hung wind chimes on the porch. I sat there for a while, listening to them clink in the breeze, realizing that peace had finally found this place, even if it wasn't for us. I stopped by a small cafe nearby, the kind of quiet place I'd always dreamed of reading in when I was younger. As I sipped my coffee, I thought about the boy who once gave up his dreams so his sister could chase hers. The boy who worked double shifts while being called ungrateful. The man who was told that love meant sacrifice. I didn't hate that version of me anymore. He did what he had to do to survive. When I got home later that night, I walked into my apartment, the one I paid for myself, decorated with things that reflected me. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the faint city lights through the blinds. It all felt like a quiet reward. I sat on the couch, opened my journal, and wrote something simple. I don't owe anyone anything anymore. Therapy taught me that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconnection. Sometimes it just means letting go of the hope that the past could have been different. My parents still text from new numbers now and then, but I never answer. I don't need to. I've built a life that's mine. No guilt, no debt, no emotional blackmail. Just peace. And when I think back to that 16-year-old kid who gave up everything for his family, I finally wish I could tell him, "You were never the problem. You were the beginning of your own freedom."